Hello everybody and welcome to the Mixed Media Animating Photos and Illustrations Masterclass. So this is a short one, we have just 2 weeks, and this is a great opportunity. So if you have photos, you have illustrations, 3D designed elements, even layers. So today we're going to look at just working with your photos and illustrations as they are. And next week we're going to look at how we can also work with layers too. So it's a really fun workshop in terms of, being able to deal with how do we take what we're creating in photography and digital illustration, for example, and how can we make this into potentially an online gallery exhibit, a video that we want to post, and that kind of idea. So we're trying to bring these elements of photography and illustration and into the fold of video use as well. So what a great way to be able to present your photos and illustrations than to use the video format and to put it into a sequence and just to make it work that way. So it's a great opportunity to do that. So that's what we're going to look at today. So I just want to thank all our partners in making this project happen. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, then we have our library partners. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, we have the Collingwood Public Library, and the Muskogee Beach Public Library. Now in terms of what's available, the equipment, the software that we're using is free. So you can load this on your own computer. And if you don't have a desktop that you feel can handle video editing, that we're going to demonstrate in the animation and effects and things, then you can also access IMAX directly through the library partners. So again, remember those library partners. If you're a member of any of those 3 libraries, there are IMAX available. So as soon as the libraries have open access to computer stations, then you'll be able to book those or even just come in and use them. So we have 2 iMac computers that will be dedicated at each library, and those are for you to use. So the same software we're using in all the workshops, you'll be able to access there as well. So it's a really great solution to make everything work. So let's carry forward. So let's look at what's going on. So in terms of what we'll be looking at today is we're going to look at preparing files for animation, and then we're going to look at importing them into DaVinci Resolve editing software, adding movement and effects, and there's a lot more, but that's just kind of the main overview of the information. Like I said, so today we're going to really focus on bringing in these elements that can be used to bring to life or to present what you would have, let's say, in a gallery. So that's, I think, what a lot of us, in terms of the artists right now are struggling to. How do you present your photographs or your paintings, or maybe you need to do photographs of some of your work. So this is a great way, even if you didn't necessarily shoot video. So let's say you did some paintings, just using paint, not even digital, and you took photos of them. So that's what we're going to look at. How can you take those photos and bring them to life and make videos out of them and work at them. And then next week we're going to again look at those different layers. So let's say you worked in Photoshop, you can bring in layers and then work on the different layers as elements within the video. So if you've taken any of our video editing courses, there's layers, different tracks of video, and it's a great way to add all the different tracks in terms of how you can then manipulate each track. So think of it this way: if you created, there's one background, and then there's a drawing, there's a person in the foreground or a character or an object, and you have a different background. So you can then manipulate the different backgrounds, and we're going to look at that. And we're going to look at how we can take regular photos and how we can do some manipulation with them as well by the time we're done into next week. Okay, so let's start up here. Let's have a look at preparing files for animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here to the computer, and I'll just switch over to the screen here. So I just have a hard drive. We have just a masterclass folder. So what I've done is, what you want to first do is really figure out what you need to put into your project. So what do you want to present? How do you want to present it? So that's what I think really important, is that it's not just going to happen. The key is to really put together, what elements do you want to put into your video presentation or animation presentation. So in this case, I've taken some paintings from some of our past workshops, so digital paintings of photographs and some photographs as well. So just to give you an example, there's this photo of just Niagara Falls. Let me just zoom out here so we can actually close it. So there's that one, a big photo file. We have the Niagara Escarpment here. So another photo. So we're gonna look at how we bring photos in that way. Then we did some painting versions. So we'll look at, how do we deal with painted elements. And again, these are flat. And next week we'll look at how we can also then manipulate it in terms of the layers themselves. So these are just final JPEGs. And and here's like a background, let's say, for a gallery. So we're going to look at that too. How can we bring in different gallery elements? So let's say if we want to have the background like this, we're going to also look at how we can add different solid backgrounds. And then it's going to lead us all the way through to Fusion. That's a great part of Blackmagic Resolve. And it's also Fusion Studio, the whole standalone software, is something that's available on our library partner computers too. So that's the great news, that you can do more advanced work. So what Fusion is, it's basically a Blackmagic's type of After Effects. It's node based. So if any of you have been taking some of our Blender 3D animation design workshops, that series, you're probably familiar now with the nodes and how that works. Nodes are also used in Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve's color grading. So those nodes are basically, you're putting like different squares. So here's this element goes to this element and something happens in between. And the visualization of that, it's really great because you're not just working on it in these hidden layers like After Effects, but you're seeing it visually in this real node world. So we'll look at, that's where we're going to get to by the end of this workshop. So really exciting to get that. So once I have everything set up, I've also picked grabbed a couple pieces of music. So we might want to put some music to this as well. And that can help us time things out. So the next thing I'll do is I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to start up my DaVinci Resolve software. So this is the studio version. And this is what's available on the iMacs and the libraries. And you'll also find that you can get the totally free version, the non-studio version, and download it for no cost. So it's totally free. And that's why we like to demonstrate with this, that pretty much everything here, there's just a few extra features that the studio version can do, but you'll be able to do everything that I demonstrate today with the free DaVinci Resolve version 17 that you can just download. Okay, so I'm just going to go to a totally untitled project, and we're just going to look at, this is what the blank slate is of DaVinci Resolve. So what I'm going to do first is, you want to always, we've had some conversations about this, but what I'm going to do is just start a regular full HD project so that I know that's what I want to do. Now the key when you're working with photos, illustrations, animation is to decide what the final project size will be in video, because your photos might be huge. They might be like 8K equivalent in video. So we want to be able to say, okay, I want it to be full HD. That's how I'm going to do it. And that's going to be the kind of the largest raster size of what we're working with. And that keeps the files to reasonable size as well. You might decide that you want to work in 4K or Ultra HD. And that's just a matter of a different setting. So let's have a look at what the two different setting kind of options are. So what we do is we just go to File, we go to Project Settings, and here you can see right now Timeline Resolution. This is the timeline that we're going to put our photos and illustrations in to animate with. And it's default like this. Now I'm just going to make this 23.976 instead of 24. And that's just, it comes in a 24 setting. So it's 23.976 is what I like to use. You might also want to use 2997 if you want a 30 frame project, or you might want to go to 5994. So those fraction things are important because that's what actual video runs at. So when you're putting it to social media or projectors and things, they're going to want one of these fraction version ones. And those fractions, just to make a long story short in terms of explanation, it just allows for the color burst synchronization signal to happen in NTSC or North American technical standards for video. So that's why they're not exactly 24 or 30 or 60. We have those little slight differences because of our how our TVs came to be. So it's a big, long history. And it could be a 6-part mini-series just to go through that, but that's basically what you want to do. Now, video monitoring, I'm just going to monitor in regular HD here as well. So that's just if what you're looking at on the screen, and that's it. So now here, the other option, so if I didn't want to do HD and I wanted to do Ultra HD, so let's say you're going to have it in a gallery and the projectors can handle more than Full HD. So Full HD is at 1920 by 1080. So the other option is, instead of full HD, the 1920 by 1080, I can say, I can scroll down here and you'll see all these different resolutions. Ultra HD right here is 3840 by 2160. Now that option's available. Now in the non-studio version, you won't be able to go to 8K. That's what's unlocked in the full studio version. But you'll be able to go up to this Ultra HD. So that's what we do if we wanted to finish it in Ultra HD. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to just do what's called Full HD, 1920 by 1080. This is going to give me access to basically the most amount of projectors. So I'm going to think about making this as if I'm presenting this online and in a gallery space that will have a kind of a hybrid setting to allow people to move faster and see more works as we kind of pivot this new normal. So the new normal might be more digital and more video, and that's why we're putting something like this together to start to think about how can we create elements and videos that can reflect our art. Okay, so that's the project settings. I just simply say save, and that's it. And now what I'm going to want to do is File. I'm going to go under here to Project Save As, and we're going to save it as some sort of a name. So I'm going to say Animation of Photos Demo. Click Enter, and that's it, and I'm saved. It's going to take a second. Okay, so now we've saved. So now what we do is every time I'm working on the project to finish it, I can simply just hit, it's going to move the keyboard over here. So I can hit Command S. So you just be hitting right down here. So Command and S. Command S to save, Command Z to undo. And those are your main elements here of in the keyboard world of what we're working with. Okay, so let's continue on now. So what I'm going to do now is right click, I'm going to create a new timeline, and I'm going to just call it Photo Animation Cut 1. Perfect. Now I need the timeline to put elements into it. So what I'm also going to do now is go New Bin, and I'm going to call this Photos and Illustrations. And this is just to keep myself organized. I'm going to create another bin. I'm going to call this Music. And that gives me all the elements. So here, just to zoom in, so I have my photo animation sequence, which is this thing right here. We have photos and illustrations as a bin, and music. So the bins are going to be where we contain things, bring things in. So I'm going to just go Import Media. And I'm going to just find, I have that folder that I was showing you guys before. It's my masterclass, photo and illustration. And I'm going to bring in all these like elements that I have, the JPEGs, the PNGs. These are all the elements that I want. I'm going to hit enter, and now they've all loaded. So I can click, and they show up. So each one of these is a little representation of the photo. You can see they're different like aspect ratios and different elements like so. Okay, so that's great. Go back to the master here. I'm just going to go to the edit page here, so I have the way I like to work. Okay, and now for music, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click, import media. I'm going to bring in these two tracks. So I'm just hitting Command, click on it, and hit Open or Enter, and that's going to give me the music. So let me just make sure this is going to play back for you guys so you hear it as well. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you can hear there's a little bit of music playing through, so that's great. Okay, and that gets a little bit louder there. Okay, so that's just a little bit of music that we might put in the background, and that's nice. Okay, so let's continue over here. So what I'm going to do first is let's look at photos. How can we work with photos? So I'm going to just simply take this photo, and it's going to drag it right down in here, and then just have it. I'm going to zoom in over here on the timeline, and the beauty of this is it brings it in at just 4 seconds, or I guess, sorry, 5 seconds here. And what I'm going to do is just drag it out, because I'm going to say, okay, I want it to be like 13 seconds. And here's the photo. So it doesn't do anything too exciting, right? So that's one photo. Okay, so that's one element like so. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is let's look at how we can do some photo manipulation with it. I'm going to take the other one, this one right here, put this right after. Okay, and again, just make it a bit longer. And now what we'll see is up here, if I click on this, we get all this fun stuff here, which is transforming tools. And we have these little diagonals, which are keyframes. Now keyframes are essentially, we're saying, okay, this is what happens at this first keyframe, and this is what happens by this next keyframe. And then the software calculates the movement and animation that has to happen from point A to point B keyframe, or keyframe 1 to keyframe 2. And that's how we go. And we can keep doing as many keyframes as we want, so we can create really precise movements and what we want. So what the key is here is I'm going to click on the keyframe. You see it goes red, and it tells me what's happening. So that's right up here, the red. And I can click on as many of these as I want. So I can click on position, I can click on rotation, and like that. So let's just play with those three first. And now I'm going to just play. So at first it's all basically at like 0, we'll call it. And let's say by about here, I want to change it. So I'm going to click this again. Click, click, click. And now I'm telling it, add another keyframe at this point. So now I'm going to just drag this. I'm going to make it a bit, I'm going to like zoom in on it. I'm going to also have it go up and have it also move on the x-axis a little bit like that. And we're going to do a little bit of a rotation with it. And here now, let's go from the beginning and let's play it back. See, and just like that, we've created an overall zoom and a slight rotation. Okay, now the beauty of this is we've created this. I can go back and I'm going to open this up right here. I can add, you can see here's the little keyframes showing like what they're doing. So I can say, okay, let's zoom in a bit more. So I can manipulate this. And then I can also tell it, you know, to kind of like ease in a little bit. So it kind of comes in a bit slower with these tools right here. Let's have a look at that. So you can see how it kind of slows down like that. It almost feels like I'm there and it's all of a sudden the still photo has some life to it, right? And that's quite nice. So if I like that, we can, let's go to the next photo. We're gonna do something, let's do kind of the opposite. So I'm gonna, again, engage my keyframes, and you wanna be doing that right at the first frame. So if I'm using the arrow keys here, here's these arrow keys right over here. So I can go left, right on the frames with these. So here it is, going left, right. So I can see the end of the previous shot, going to the next shot. So I want to start the keyframe on the next shot right there. So let's kind of start the opposite. This one I'm going to maybe zoom out to reveal where we are. Okay. And I'm going to come back over here and just drag it out. And then here I'm going to go to like basically a 0, if you will, or close to it. And you know, whatever you feel like you want to do. You can see, so there's a little bit of a black bar on top. So I just want to make sure that's kind of gone. Okay, let's have a look at that. So now we go from this one kind of zooming out, kind of holds it at the end. And this one, we're going to start from zoomed in to zooming out. And we've quickly done these animations. So we're just doing these keyframes from point A to point B. And then we're able to do it like so, which is, it's pretty cool. Okay, so that's great. So that gives me that idea of like the whole image in the frame. And I'm, you know, zooming in, I'm zooming out. And those are just done with 2 keyframes. We can also add more. So the more keyframes, the more you can do in terms of like movements and things. The one thing with any kind of, when you do these kinds of animations to photos and things, you want to really think about keeping it smooth and subtle for the most part. If you're presenting photos, you know, you can imagine if something is whipping in, it could be really distracting and disturbing for the viewer that just wants to, you know, enjoy the photo that they have here and what you've presented to them. So, it's an important thing to think about. What are you doing it for? Why are you doing it? And, kind of what are the goals of achieving this? So let's go just from there. Now, in terms of what we can do now, let's go with I'm just going to create another sequence now. Go over here. I'm going to create a whole new timeline. And this is the great thing. You can always create new timelines and try different things out. So this is going to be photo animation cut 2. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. I'm going to add a track. So I have 2 tracks of video. I'm going to go to the photos. Same kind of thing here. I'm going to take this photo. But now I'm going to select track 2 up here. So instead of track 1, I'm going to go to track 2. And the reason is I'm going to put something underneath it. And now we're going to look at how do we create a gallery type atmosphere. So, we can do something similar with movements. But now we're going to look at what happens if we scale it down. So now I'm going to go over here to generators. So under the effects here, I'm going to go to generator. And I'm going to look at creating a solid color. So I'm going to click on that. Okay. And what I'm going to do from there is I'm going to just take that, drag that over here. Okay. And I'm going to turn this off and we're going to see right now it's black. So let's make this a white background. Go okay. And watch, when I turn the photo on, it's full screen because it's a full 1920 by 1080. So what I'm going to do is just make it a big smaller overall. And now I have this nice border. So you can imagine with the border, that can be pretty cool. Okay, and then I can just keep that going like from there. Right, so that's kind of fun. So now I can just say, this is all I want. I just want it to be like this. And I don't have to do any kind of an animation. And now I can just present it as, on a white wall. So I can give people that kind of a white wall. Then I can go over here, I can just click a little bit of a fade in, a fade out. And I'm going to take my next photo and just drag that right after. And keep going from there. And that's going to be a little fade out. And I can drag this whole white background underneath. Right, so I'm just creating the 2 layers. And let's have a look at what that is. Now I can copy the same preset. So I'm just going to say Command C on the keyboard. Then I'm going to go over here, I'm going to right click and say Paste Attributes. Click on the video attributes, apply, and I'm going to get the exact same border that was here to here. So everything's going to match. Let's play it back. Right, so that's pretty cool. I'm just going to make this a little bit shorter for demonstration purposes so we don't have to sit through it the whole time. Right, so great little fun way to do a slideshow. And, so we can do something like that. That's one way. We can also create what's called a window. And let's just see if we can. There we go. So we can play with adding a window here, and playing with a window that's inside here. Right, so you can see all these different effects. We can quickly, and then there can be a window of a window of a window, and that could be pretty fun. Let's see, divide, normal. So you can see how we can make these kinds of things work in terms of okay, there's a window, and then we have a black bar around it. So multiple ways to deal with that. So I'm just going to click delete on that. Now we can also make gradients. Right, so you can take this and have a gradient in the background. Right, so a very different effect, but that gradient can be different. And then we can also we have this gallery background. That could be our background. So, if we had this kind of preset background, let's just drag that over and look at what this looks like. Okay, so we did these these fades, so let's get rid of those And I just did those quick on the side here, just with the little quick fade controls, fade in and out. Now let's look at what happens if maybe we can use some transitions. So let's go right here to video transitions, and we can say, let's look at some of these like push and things. So maybe we can have it like push in. So let's see what that looks like. And then we can have the next one push. Right, so we can make this kind of slideshow, if you will, and that could be really fun. We can have, even more types of things. Let's see here. I'm gonna just click on that, delete that. I don't know what this crash zoom is. Let's have a look. Kind of zooms in like so. That's kind of fun. That's kind of cool, right? So all of these really neat things is, what we can do. There's a film strip one here. Let's have a look at what the film strip. That's probably going to be a pretty interesting one. Let's have a look at the film strip. There we go. That's kind of neat. Right? It looks like the film's kind of moving, right? So you can see all these really interesting transitions. So that's how we can put something in the background, have images on top, we can crop them, bring them down, right? And play with that, and then do different zooms and things like that on top of it too. So another thing we can do too is then, I'll go down here, we can go to Fusion, and this is where we can start to play with what the image does. So this is basically the layer. So it's telling me what the image is. I'm going to go right here, and in Fusion I'm going to go Add Tool, and let's do like a bit of a scale type transition. So I'm just going to go in the beginning here, and I'm going to say, okay, just stay at 1. I'm going to go to the end frame here, which is 213, and here I'm going to say, make it bigger. Okay, I'm going to go back to the edit here, and I think there's that film strip's going to kind of mess that up, so let's get rid of that transition. Okay, and then what we need to do here is import media, and we're going to put this photo directly here. Oops, there we go. Interesting. Doesn't want to take it in. Okay, let's go here. We're going to here we go. Here's our media pool. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so we're just going to take our Niagara Escarpment, and we're going to go here. Place medium 1. Yes. Okay. Okay, and let's have a look at the scale here. Okay, so then in this case, see, we're able to add these different transitions here. And here, let me just replace this tool. Let's get it something a little bit different here. I'll put a little bit of a blur, defocus. Okay, so here's our defocus. So what we can do here, let's just have fun with this. So I'm going to go back here from the beginning. I'm going to keyframe this. I'm going to go to right over here, and I'm going to basically make it come into focus. To 0. Okay, and then I'm going to have it go out of focus at the end. Like that. Okay, let's have a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to get rid of this beginning transition here, and just hit delete on that, and let's have this play back. So it goes from out of focus to in focus. It's doing a little bit of a real-time render here. So as we go, smooth itself out. Right, so that's it playing back. So we kind of go from the out of focus. See, it's out of focus, comes into focus. That's really cool. Let me just zoom in a little bit so we can see that a bit cleaner. See, it's out of focus, comes right into focus, and then it just comes to out of focus. And we can end there, for example. Then we can get to the next shot. So we can play with those in Fusion. So that's what was the cool thing about this software, is that we have that Fusion tab. We can go right in there and create these different tools that get loaded in between the different elements here. Right, so that's a really neat thing. Okay, so now let's look at what we can do with some of the illustrations. So I'm just going to do another timeline here. Create a new timeline. And we're going to say illustration. Animation. Oops. Computer just getting a little bit slow here. Okay, animation, cut to one, sorry. Great. Okay, now we're clean, that's good. Okay, so now let's put in our illustrations. So we have this one. We did a painting version. You can see it's different kind of aspect ratios here. It's the same idea. I'm going to start with these kinds of keyframing here. And move along to the end. Last frame, hit the arrow key. And I'm going to finish it off with some sort of a zoom in. Really get in there. And give it maybe a little bit of a rotation too. That's kind of cool. So let's have a look now what that's going to look like. So that's pretty cool, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to have a start point. Go to the last frame here. Do those keyframes again. Zoom in here. Want to maybe frame more on the boat there, and just like that. Let's have a look at what that looks like. Okay, so you can see what we're doing. We just have the main element there, the photo or the illustration. It's just on its own, and then just doing some animation within it to create these like zooms in, rotation, and that kind of an element. And then we can put some transitions and work from there. So let's try a couple more things with this. And let's kind of start with smaller. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is just going to click on these with and command to select both, and then I'm going to just put a little bit of the, let's try that, oops, wrong one. We want the gallery background here. Let's see what that looks like underneath it. So if it's kind of zooming in from a start point. Right, so that's one thing. I'm just going to go back to the generator here. We can create a paper background too, which is kind of cool. Let's have a look at what paper looks like. So you can see by having these different backgrounds, it's kind of a fun way to do that. So now, let's see if we want to put a little bit of music. I'm just going to put that in here. It's going to make a little bit of an in and out point here for that. And what I want to do too is I just want to make it a bit lower in the volume. So all I'm doing here is, again, just clicking on the music. I can create an in and out point of where I want it for. Okay, maybe that's it, in and out point. So I'm just going I, O. So that's right here on the keyboard. Just the I and O. In, out, right? And that gives me the in and out. And then what I can do is I can just take that, because I made the in and out, I can just drag it, and it's going to just put that piece down. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of that, cut or delete. And it's going to lower the volume. So typically music, about -6 decibels. So I'm just clicking on that, I can lower the volume a bit. See, that's pretty cool. And then maybe, here I'm just putting in, a little bit of information, like a quick kind of a gallery logo of what this was about. See, so you can, by having that paper texture, that looks pretty cool to me, because getting a little bit of this paper texture, putting some illustrations on it, and then doing the keyframes and moving them in. So let's just have a little bit of a more in-depth look at these keyframes, just to kind of see what we're doing. So down here, I can click on the keyframe, and you can see this is what's happening. So it's zooming in by the end here. So I can make that zoom bigger right here. So I can do it directly there. And then let's just zoom out of here. And then here, I can click on the other elements. So I can say, okay, what's my, the Y, so the X and the Y. Okay, I can also then go, what's the positioning? Is it how much of a rotation? So I can play with the rotation here. And so you can see there's each one of these keyframes. Then I can go back here, and you can click on this, and I can add another keyframe here. So I can make it rotate differently. Right? And then within that keyframe, I can then make these little ease in and ease out. Okay, so let's go right here, and I'm going to do the similar thing here. I'm going to play with the rotation. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to just ease that in or out. Right, so now it's a little bit funkier with some of the rotations, but you can see, so that's where the work is of that keyframing. So that kind of idea there. And then what we can do too is, now that we have this, we can say, okay, well, we can go to Fusion, and then we can play with some of those additional effects within that. So you can see this one's dealing with this particular one. And if I click on the next shot, or the first shot, it's dealing with this shot. Right, and I go over here, I'm going to click on this one, just put that there, and I'm going to be working on this shot. So it puts up each shot that is within the sequence, wherever your cursor is and whatever you're selected on. Let's go right here. So we're just going to, let's add a little bit of, let's just see what we can do here. We can maybe add a little bit of glow, we'll call it. Again, these are just, I'm not saying that necessarily use it, but just how we can do a little bit of initial effects. And then we're going to do maybe a bit of it. Let's go in camera like that. And we'll keyframe it here. Shiny region. So see, there's all sorts of fun elements. So same thing applies here. So it's that same keyframing. You just keyframe them and you decide where it is in that timeline. So that whole timeline tells you, so in this case, I have 118 frames to work with. So I'm going to just go, okay, let's go from here. And by the end, let's have it really glowing a lot. So we can, look at a kind of a bigger spread like so. And then let's choose another element. Brightness. And by the end, we're going to go really bright. And we can also choose kind of what color it's glowing with. So you can see it's a bit of a yellow glow. So let's have a look at how that animates. So you can see these are really subtle. We're just going kind of from, A to B, and it adds a little bit of yellow glow. So that could be, beyond kind of, the original painting is not that, but maybe maybe that's the whole point, is you want to make these paintings glow, pop in different ways. So we can start to animate colors, textures, what happens within these as well. So that could be a really fun way in terms of, what we're doing to them. Okay. So let's look at this one and just see what we can do here. Oh, that was the first one there. Let's go to the first, this one here now. Okay. So again, you can see this is how the nodes work. So this connects to out. Really in its basic principle. I'm going to right click, I'm going to add a tool, and we can look at different things. So we can put film, we can put film grain, we can put different effects. We can make it look like it's on a TV, like so, right? I'm going to hit right click, replace tool. So let's do something else. I'm just going to find something a little more dramatic here. Stylize. So let's do like a vignette. Right? So we can do that kind of a vignette. Okay, and let's have a look at what that looks like. That's cool. So I think what's important here is what I really want to showcase is initially with, when we work from the timeline and then we go into Fusion, and this is what we'll carry on next week, is the Fusion elements are within that element. So you can see how it's specifically just in the box around the Niagara Falls illustration. It doesn't affect the paper. So I'm not doing it to the whole image. I'm just doing it to that photo and working within that photo. So that's really an important part of what Fusion lets us work on in that way. Right? And then from here, we can add more nodes. And that's what we're going to get into next week, is different additional nodes and looking at the different layers of what we can do and kind of, and work from there. So same with this, we can always keyframe this and we can, create an additional additional elements here, right? So we can put, we can bring this up here, and then we can actually, mix these together and figure out, then something happens to it here, and you can see how, and that's how we get into the layering. So that's really exciting. And then what we're going to do too is we can take what we worked on as a Photoshop document file. So if we're working, let's say in either Adobe Photoshop or Affinity Photo, if you did your illustration in layers, that's what we're going to do next week, is take those layers, we're going to import the Photoshop document, and it's going to come in as layers in Fusion. And then we can animate each layer. So it's going to have those, just like we have this, I'm creating additional layers like this, so like 1, 2, and so on. It's going to do that automatically with the Photoshop file. So I think it's pretty cool. Like we managed to put a little show together. Right, so not too bad at all. And then what we want to be able to do is, how can we do something beyond that? So next week we're going to really focus on, how can we do the layers, and we're going to see how we can have the backgrounds as one layer and a foreground layer, and that foreground layer can be doing something else. The background can be blurred. All of a sudden we're working with the layers in this kind of like an animation table almost, where you have like, multiple layers, foreground, middle ground, background, and they can have different blurs. The background can be blurred, even though it was totally sharp when you started. So, and taking photos, taking elements on top of it, and then working on that as well. But this is a great way to start. So let's just look at kind of what we did so far. We took our first photo animation, really basic, but just zooming in over like 13 seconds, having a nice display of things. Right, so that was one way. Then we took this one, and we just had a little bit of the like kind of blur in, blur out. And here we're just playing with the photos with a background. And what is that background? So we put that, we can just have it over a white background. And you can see just by having the photos like same sizes on the white background, it's a really elegant way to do it. It's really simple. We've just reduced the size. We're not really doing any kind of movement to it, but it's just how do you create that kind of a white background, put a layer on top, and we can go from there. And then the last thing we did is we took our illustration files. We did a bit of rotations, and we did a little bit of glow. We did a little bit of vignette, and we put some music to it. And we also have that paper background, which is kind of nice, this textured background here. You can just zoom in on it. You can see it gives it a little bit of texture, and it's a little bit different than just a solid white background. Okay, so that's all we're going to get to today. So again, next week, please join us. If you haven't already got your ticket for next week, make sure you sign up for that. Same link. If you can just use the same link, but just make sure you add it to your reminders that to join us for next week. You can also rewatch these right here directly on this Vimeo link. So we really encourage that you can rewatch things and see them again, go over any kind of tools. I think the main element here, the main takeaway I really want to focus on is the fact that we have the keyframes. So you always need a point A and a point B. And that's all we've been doing. So you can see right here. So we have the point A, zoom, and the point B, how we're like, zooming in and changing that. So it can be more zoomed in. So you can see by the point B. And everything in between is just relative to that point A to point B. So once you understand the keyframes, there's point A, point B, putting those in, you can add in between keyframes, and you're basically, those are the key moment of what you want that photo or illustration to be like in that particular transformation effect or overall visual effect. And then you keyframe everything, you put it together, plays it back by the keyframes, and then you can move the keyframes around too. So let's go over to our rotation one. So here I put one right here, but I can always move it and say, hey, I want it to finish the rotation a bit earlier. So let's have a look at what that does. Right, so that makes it a lot more intense. Right, and then we can make it a little bit more subtle. Right, and that's it. So just by clicking on it, I can move it along, and I can also change the ease in and ease out elements that it put on the sides. And that's how easy it is to retime. You don't have to relay all your keyframes. You can just retime and say, I want it to finish a second earlier. So just retime it. And you can try to be really precise on the frames and stuff, but you really need to watch, rewatch, and that's the key to doing these types of projects, is to watch and rewatch and go from there. So yeah, that's perfect. If you have any questions, you can email me directly, tom@tbmcs.ca. I'm just putting that in the chat there. If anyone has any questions, we have a few minutes here. I can take some questions in the chat as well. But again, really, it's pretty straightforward, I think, in terms of getting these keyframes going, getting some images in there. And next week, we'll get into those layers and bring in a PSD file, Photoshop document, and then seeing what we can do with the individual elements and creating those different layers of sorts. So yeah, that's perfect. Really want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm just going to put on our screen here. I just want to thank all of our partners in making this happen. The Affinity Photo, if anyone's interested, you can check out the Affinity Photo software. We have a bunch of workshops on that already, and that's what we're going to use to create our Photoshop documents. And then from there, it also works on an iPad, which is really great. So you can do all that, then you can send it over to a desktop. So Affinity we'll be using next week. We'll continue with DaVinci Resolve. Just want to thank all of the partners and the funders for making this happen. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and we have our library partners where you can access these iMac computers and the software we're demonstrating with if you don't have a desktop of your own or laptop. Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library. Have a great rest of the day, and be sure to join us for week 2 next week. Same time, same place. I'll see you then. Take care.